This is the Self-Taught or Not podcast with
Dylan Israel
and Eric Hanchett, where we teach you the do's and don'ts of software development from two software development professionals, one self-taught and one not. I think today's topic is pretty fun. It's something that I've been thinking about a lot, and that is mentorship. And so I want to define mentorship in two different ways for those of you who've kind of heard it in the past and maybe you've seen other people do it or you've seen it in TV shows or movies, but you're not really sure what it relates to, especially coding mentorship. And Dylan is perfect. Dylan's done a ton of mentorship for other people. He's actually mentored other people. So I'd love to, we're kind of bounce these topics off each other.
Yeah, and I think this is a interesting sort of topic because mentorship, I think, means a lot of things in software development. And I think a lot of people who are just getting going say, I want to mentor this and that. They don't really even understand the question they're asking or what they're gonna get out of it.
Yeah, so let's start off with kind of answering like why you would want to do code mentorship and what it is. So I break it up between two different things, code mentorship and just like mentorship in general. And when I think about mentorship in general, I think, well, code mentorship, let's start with code mentorship. It's really to help you improve your code. I think it helps you, give you interview prep, and it gives you advice on situations at work and career. So if you approach someone and you want to get kind of code mentorship, that's kind of the idea behind it. I mean, is that how it is when you mentor people, Dylan?
Yeah, so when people reach out to me for mentorship, it's typically a one-on-one sort of situation, and we're either creating what I like to describe it as is like, forget the specifics. What a good mentor does is provide direction. You know, so you can go up, down, left, or right. I've gone these directions. This is the one I would most recommend, and this is why, which isn't always what a lot of people think mentoring is going to be. A lot of times people think, especially when it comes to code, that you're going to have someone sort of sitting right next to you and, you know, holding your hand, and that's just not very practical.
So do you draw like upon your experiences when you mentor people?
Yeah, and I would even say that like that specific type of mentorship is a unique example of like, hey, one-on-one sort of mentoring. This is not common for most people. You know, these are people who are like absolutely just want to, you know, they're paying good money for your time. So of course you're dedicating that effort to them. But you know, the most valuable thing you have to offer as someone who has several years experience and is growing and gone through all this stuff is experience. More often than not, though, I would say the best type of mentorship is just finding those people that you can be around and keeping your eyes open and ears open, and maybe you'll pick up some gems along the way.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I think more in general, to your point, is that it's like anything you want to improve on. So anything that you are struggling with, or you have an idea of something you admire and something you want to be, and you can use the experience of the person that you're with, or you can learn the tips and tricks that they're doing to improve what you are trying to do. And so it can save like a lot of time in the long run. So if we've all gone through, I don't know, maybe like a good analogy is if you're trying to learn a language, and if you just read out of a book and you listen to people like on speaking that language, it'll probably take you quite a long time to learn it. However, if you had someone mentoring you in this language and they were telling you, oh, this is actually how you pronounce this, and this is how this works. I mean, it's going to speed up your learning quite a bit.
Yeah, and I think that's not the common, like sometimes people are like, how can I get a mentor? I go to meetups and ask people to be my mentor, and it's like, it doesn't really work like that, man. No one's, you know, everyone's got their own things going on. People have families, people have kids, pets, jobs, multiple jobs sometimes. No one's really looking to take that on. How you become, you know, sort of the mentee is just injecting yourself into those meetups, learning from these, making connections. And I know I've been at numerous meetups where people are just getting going and I'm just explaining the basics of, their very first library of jQuery, and just sat down with them for 10, 15 minutes and saved them hours upon hours just sort of breaking this stuff down. And that's the more realistic type, but you can definitely find mentors in the workplace as you're getting going, which is why, like, one of the reasons I recommend people always, for their first couple jobs, go into the office rather than try and get that super sexy remote lifestyle we all dream about.
Oh yeah, we're going to touch on that. Finding mentors in the workplace, finding mentors at meetups. And I think that's a good point, is that sometimes when you first hear about mentorship, you think, well, I need to find someone and say, will you be my mentor? And I think, I don't know anyone that's done that. I know it probably happens occasionally, but the more traditional way of happening is, you become friends with someone, you kind of ask them questions, and you go from there. So let's jump.
It's a little bit immature and childish to a degree, is how I think about it. It's like, it's almost like back when you're in like middle school or like elementary school, I say, will you be my girlfriend? And it's like, as an adult, what ends up happening in most people's dating lives is you introduce yourself, you get to know each other, you go on a few dates, you exchange some information, one thing leads to another. And building relationships is very much like that, because when you have this mentor relationship, that's what it is it's a connection where you have sort of someone with more knowledge and someone with less knowledge, and trying to sort of equal the plane.
Yep. And I want to preface this too by saying that this is probably could be another whole topic, but it just got me thinking of that. When you are looking to better yourself, when you're looking to have these mentorship type relationships with people, and that you're trying to improve yourself, improve your career, there are going to be people out there that look down on you. There are going to be people that try to pull you back down to where they are. They're going to discourage you along the way. And it might be your friends or family. It could be coworkers, it could be people online. Just keep that in mind. I'll give you an example. Like when I first started really getting into school, I actually, a better example probably would be when I was first trying to write my first book. I had talked to some people, and it was controversial between some of the people I talked to. A lot of people said, well, you're going to waste a bunch of time. It's not going to really help your career. And then I had some other people who were encouraging of it. So you kind of have to take everybody's opinion with a grain of salt and try to figure out what you need to do to improve yourself and how it's going to prove. And don't worry about what other people think, especially with things like your career.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, it's your career. You need to do what's best for you. And it's oftentimes will be those people who are closest to you that are going to dissuade you and say, oh, don't do that, do this. And it's like, well, you don't even know what you're talking about. I have people all the time, and family members try to give me advice about software engineering. It's like, do you know how much time and energy I put into this? Like, if you were a software engineer, I would definitely listen a little bit closely, but everyone can provide value, but you have to be careful about whose opinion you value and how much weight you put to it.
Yeah, exactly. And the worst is unsolicited feedback. Someone that doesn't know you very well, or maybe they know you very well, but you never asked them for feedback, and then they decide to jump in and give it to you.
Yeah, and that's not to say that there aren't, like, for the most part, 9 out of 10 senior devs that you're going to meet are going to be nice individuals. They have some decency, but like I give this example all the time about like negative role models and how like that is a form of mentoring for me. And like one of the very first times, might have been the second time I ever gone to a meetup. I had just started my YouTube channel like 6 months prior, and I'm just introducing myself because a friend invited me down there, and the guy immediately looked me up on LinkedIn and said some douchey thing like, I didn't know pizza delivery drivers could make web development videos or something like that. And to me, that's almost a form of mentorship where you are reminded of who you don't want to be, and like because just being the person you want to be and being the person you don't want to be are equally as important.
Yeah, I think that gives me fuel too, especially when I have people that try to put me down or said I can't do something. It's like, yeah, I want to prove those guys wrong. All right, so let's talk about. So I think we kind of defined what mentorship is, and a few tips. And one thing I also say is that when you are looking for mentors, be it more formal or less formal, and like I said, probably more less formal is better, is just to be picky about who you decide to listen to and choose. just like you're picky on people who give you advice, you should be really picky about people who you are seeking out to be a mentor with, and realize that sometimes one person might be perfect for one person and might not be perfect for you.
Yeah, and that's definitely an excellent point. I know one I don't want to call him a student of mine, but one individual that I mentored, the reason he came to me was because his school set him up with a mentor program. And the individual told him, like, learn these 4 technologies and these 4 things. 3 out of the 4 were programs or frameworks that were deprecated, no longer relevant, and that, clearly wasn't going to help him with his goal, which was to, become a developer and get into the marketplace.
Yeah, that's a good point. You can definitely find some people giving outdated advice. I mean, I'd almost say, like, find someone that's just a few steps above you. I mean, it'd be nice to have someone that's like 10 years or 30 years above you. But if you can find someone that has a little bit more commonality with you, it's almost like dating, going back to the dating analogy Dylan just said. If you can find someone that has a few more connections and commonalities with you, that'll make your life easier when you're dealing with them. Like if you're a 20-year-old college student and you try to your mentor is a 59-year-old CEO, that might sound amazing to a lot of people, especially if you're really driven to be an entrepreneur or something. But I could just imagine like having very few commonalities between the two, and getting in disagreements easily, and scheduling might be a problem. So then and then also any feedback you get. The worst thing I think if you're mentoring somebody and you keep giving the same feedback over and over again and they're not accepting it, or they don't take it, or they argue with you about it, that's not a great relationship. And then there's some kind of a mismatch between the mentor and the mentee at that point. And it also kind of looks bad on you, because at that point it becomes therapy.
Yeah, and I mean that's something that I struggle with a lot of times when I'm sometimes people, they don't really want mentors. What they want is somebody to agree with them and their plan, and just they're, and I like you, this goes for many things. Like I've watched so many Dave Ramsey's videos where people just try and argue with Dave about his beliefs and like trying to convince him. It's like sometimes, if you just want someone to tell you that you're killing it, just look in a mirror and tell yourself, or go find a yes man. A good mentor will tell you when you're going in the wrong direction. And that's probably that's one of the more important traits.
Mm-hmm. And commit to it. Yeah. Make sure you commit to it once you found the right person, and you do it. So the next question is like, where do you find these mentors? We kind of touched on a little bit with Meetups and workplace, but I'm going to start with one we haven't talked about yet: virtual. So there is mentor services. Dylan has a mentor service. Actually, I have two. But there's websites like codingcoach.io. There's mentors.codingcoach.io. That was created by, I think, Emma Wedekind. She and a few others created this place where anybody can post up their profile if they want to be either, I think it's just mentors post up their profile and their Twitter handles and their emails, and then you can contact them and ask them for mentorship. So most of them do it for free. I think some of them charge after a little bit. They may give you 15 minutes for free and they charge you. There's codementor.io. I think that's the biggest one out there. I think a lot of people use that, and that has a bunch of different services. I think you've worked with Code Mentor, right, Dylan?
Yeah, I'm not a fan. I don't know. I didn't like the people that I worked with. There's 1 or 2 people. I'm sure they're doing I just had a bad experience. So
yeah, I've never tried either one of those. So keep caution on the Code Mentor then. There's a new feature in Facebook groups, which we're going to try to do. Me and Dylan help run a coding Facebook group called Code Tech and Caffeine. So we're going to be turning that feature on, and essentially you can post up if you want to be a mentor and a mentee. So make sure we'll have this all in our show notes at the bottom too, some of these websites. And then there's a bunch of other services that you can pay for mentorship training, usually just on a one-on-one basis.
Yeah, there's a lot of, and don't take it as these are the only virtual platforms. It's one of the great things about just the modern world is you can, get mentored from people in a group setting across the world, in a classroom setting. One thing that I've done several occasions is signed up through code.org to go and be a mentor. And I encourage people who are interested in sort of sharing their experience and giving back. And that's I think it's sort of one of the principles of a good software engineer is to give back to the community, especially as this in self-taught or not, where we should always add that to be a good self-taught developer, oftentimes you're leaning on the shoulders of those who came before you, and it's important to give back. So like I do that through code.org, but I've also, to the virtual standpoint, I've done a lot of one-on-one with teachers through that platform, just getting them to say, hey, this is some correct curriculum. These are some resources you can teach your students as well.
And it's code.org?
Code.org, yeah. Is
it absolutely free?
It's so code.org is a nonprofit organization. I want to say like Bill Gates and maybe Mark Zuckerberg. I forget, but who exactly set it up. But it's a very large organization that they've helped run the like Hour of Code every year and things like that. And it's a accumulation of resources for their main goal is to get children involved in STEM and like programming early on. And so they've done little things like Hour of Code where they do like little Minecraft type games, and they have a whole bunch of stuff. But you can sign up there to be a mentor, and I imagine there's probably a way for you to see events that they have going on as well.
Yeah, don't they? Okay, now I remember. I actually did a little bit with my daughter in code.org a while back. I have a 9-year-old. She liked it. Yeah, I think there were some lessons in there, but you can sign up and won't they even send you to schools or send you to places too?
Yeah, so I did that right when I came down to Florida about a month and a half. Ahead of time, I was like, you know what, I think it'd be good for the resume. I think it'll be good for me. And let me just make sure that I changed the location from Los Angeles to Tampa. About a month and a half down here, I was doing what Florida had called the Great American Teach-In, where they had a bunch of speakers for the professions come and talk to children. So I was at the elementary school for maybe 4 hours. It gave about 6 talks to various like first graders, second graders, third graders, just sort of talking to them about programming and answering their questions, which really all they wanted to know is how much money you make, and which is strange for a first grader to be asking you that. And another is like, did you make Minecraft? That was the 2 questions. Nowadays, 3 years later, they'd probably be asking if I made Fortnite, but that was the questions they were asking the last time I did that.
That's cool. I remember always when I was a kid, the career day stuff was always the most fun part, because then I get my dad or somebody come to school and I would see everybody else's dads and parents there, and it was always really cool. That's awesome. So one of the things I want to talk about too is these virtual mentors. Now, I don't know if you want to call them mentors. I guess you guys could debate whether this is a real mentor, but the people that you kind of look up to, you may never ever meet in real life, but they are giving tons of information. So, for example, there's tons of Udemy and Pluralsight and Egghead and tons of websites that have instructors that you might look up to. We have Mark Zuckerberg and Bill Gates. You can it's fascinating once you get into this, and many of you are listening probably already are there, but once you start getting into this web development world or coding world in general, you'll find there's these internet celebrities or these coding celebrities that everybody looks up to, especially in like the React community. A lot of people talk about Dan Abramoff. In the Vue community, Evan You, which is a big name there because he helped create Vue. Chris Fritz also is another one. John Papa is really big in the Angular community. And Dan Whalen is also another big guy. So you start hearing these names, and if you pay attention on Twitter, that's usually where a lot of this activity goes on. You can hear from these people, and they'll be tweeting out new trends, new things that they're learning. I listen to Scott Talinsky and Wes Boss on syntax.fm. That's a podcast. I think both of us people who listen to both Dylan and I's channels, I think they can kind of connect to us quite a bit and think we might be virtual mentors to them, to the stuff we're teaching. Brad Traversy, I think he's probably one of the most popular YouTubers in the world for programming, that is, for coding in general, web development. Joshua Fluke is really blowing up. I mean, we could probably name drop a 30 other YouTubers. So there's quite a people like that out there.
Yeah, and so like to me, it counts as sort of mentoring, because sort of, again, my definition of mentoring is sort of education and direction. And if you watch a podcast, you follow someone's careers, you know what their interests are, Udemy courses, YouTube channels. A lot of times, what you're getting is that experience. You're getting the events that have been untold, the things they have learned, the things that they would recommend, and provide that direction and education. So I think these are equally as important, and probably the most common form of mentoring versus like, will you be my mentor sort of situation.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I think that out of a scale like a 1 to 10, that could certainly be like 6 or 7. But I think you definitely, the most effective way to get mentorship is have one-on-one mentorship. It's actually talking to someone, bouncing ideas off of, because you'll find a lot of times these mentors that you have, they may be a few steps above you, but they don't quite correlate exactly to where you are, and it's harder to get as much feedback. Although I think a lot of us do like to get feedback. But I know, for example, I get emails all the time, and Dylan does too, of people wanting us to go over another example that we did in one of our videos, or they want us to kind of explain some concept. And unfortunately, I can usually give maybe a couple minutes, maybe a quick reply back, but anything more involved than that, we both have families, so it's difficult to really do unless you buy our coaching service.
Yeah, that case, I'm ready to sell out all the time. No, but yeah, that brings up an excellent point. Is a lot of this virtual mentoring is content that's going out there that you're spending your time and energy listening to. It's sort of the great benefit of having a mentor in the workplace, or we'll just call him physical mentor, is that you do get that feedback. You say, oh, wait, hold up real quick. One question. And like, that's not something you really get with a lot of virtual mentors all the time. So there are a lot of these platforms, but that's definitely a great strength of having someone there to say, wait, I didn't get that. I don't quite understand. Can you elaborate?
And it also goes back to how you learn the best. I think some of us are visual learners, some of us are more auditorial learners, and some of us,
some of us learn in college, some of us don't.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So some of us need structured courses. Some, like Dylan, completely self-taught. He didn't took very few, probably none, that helped him with his web development journey.
Nothing. I mean, I'm sure some of my Java classes help, but I haven't touched anything that I learned. So
that journey, I mean, it's pretty awesome for Dylan, but not everybody's going to be able to do what Dylan did, working 10-hour days, working a pizza job, and then working for another 6 hours. Some people need to have like either a boot camp or a formal education to get through to be able to do it. So it just depends on who you are and what your goals are and how you learn. So another way you can get these mentors is just friends in real life. They say you're the average of the 5 people you hang out with the most. So that's a Jim Rohn quote. A lot of people, I've heard a lot of controversy. Some people hate that quote, but I generally like it, because I think what people get confused as, they think that, well, does that mean I need to cut mom out? Does I need to cut my sister and my family out because they're not as ambitious as I am? And that's not the point at all. The point is that if you want to get ahead, you probably should hang out with people that are similar, have either 1 or 2 steps ahead or in the same place you are. That way you can kind of reach those goals, and mentorship definitely helps facilitate that. If you're hanging out with a mentor that has that software, has a job in software development, and you want a job in software development, that would probably be more useful than hanging out with someone that works at McDonald's.
Yeah, I'm a big believer of this. I think that you have it's sort of a strange thing, especially as I'm 31 years old, and like several years ago, I would say like around 25, I probably became an adult. As crazy as that sounds, and part of that is you have to sort of evaluate what's important to you. And when you do, and you're saying, look, what's important to me is have, a career in software right now and get my life started. And I want to, part of the reason you go to Meetups is to make those connections and to have those people around you that share the same passions, that can keep you motivated, that can keep you interested. I think back to when I went to Portland to visit my brother, and like the guy that one of his friends there was going to a coding boot camp. And it was just so great to talk to someone about software, so much so that my brother had pulled me to the side and tell me that the other people asked him to ask me to stop talking about it. So, but it's an important thing. And this can translate to, any aspect of your life, not just software. You want to get in shape, go work out with a buddy and, keep yourself accountable. This is one of my more favorite things. It's something that I can say for me personally, I think I've been very successful with, and that's part of it.
And it kind of goes back to, so if you want to meet these people, we talked like a little about meetups, but it's okay to, find someone that you really aspire to be like, and, try to go and have lunch with them. That's what I used to do for a few years ago. I got really into like this lunch gig. So I'd have, after work was tough because I had young kids that I couldn't really get out too much. And on the weekends, everybody's with their family. So I'm like, everybody has to eat lunch every day. Why not, why not connect to people on lunch during my lunch hour? So like, I found a couple of people that were actually I ended up working with that were really into like entrepreneurship. And I was at that time was really into entrepreneurship and still am. But so I just invited them to lunch and we just became friends that way. I also had someone that I was in the MBA program. I had an MBA a few years ago, and I found out one of my coworkers in a different department that I didn't even know just graduated with his MBA. And he was like a manager. And at that time I was really looking to see if management was something I wanted to do. So I started talking to him and I sent him a long email. He was able to respond to me. And then I just had lunch with him and just said, hey, let's talk about the MBA program. Let's talk about your experience as a software developer. And just through those conversations with them, I learned a lot. Now, one thing I realized too, while I was meeting these people, is that I didn't always click with everybody. I'm a little bit of an introverted guy. So, I mean, some people I met were like way into, like one guy I met, he was like way into frisbee golf. That was his like thing he did. And he created a frisbee golf league. And every time at lunch, they would go they go hang out and do frisbee golf. And I'm like, I just don't do that. I'm sorry. So like we didn't quite click that way. And, he was but I learned a little bit else from him, but it wasn't somebody I wanted to hang out with all the time. So that's okay too.
Yeah. And I think that, a lot of times, especially when people are earlier in their career, it might be a little scary to ask, hey, can I, pick your brain over lunch? And the worst thing that can happen is someone just say, hey, I can't do it this time, but, maybe next time. And, offer to buy lunch or something. And a lot of times, probably the most frustrating thing, especially sort of being on sort of a semi-public figure, is just people trying to milk you for free value all the time. And so like one of the number one ways that you can get a good mentor is just to provide them value. Like it's not a one-way street. Again, these oftentimes, and this isn't necessarily a money thing either. It's about, building a relationship. It's not always going to be one-sided. And, you need to sort of understand that for a good mentor relationship.
Yeah. If you could try to provide value in some way to both sides, I think that would make the mentor feel like they're not just helping you, but you're kind of helping them somehow. And sometimes mentorship in its way is a way to help you out. So if you can kind of succinctly give advice and give some tips and help other people out, it maybe helps you out as well. But if you're looking for people that are really busy, I think you should think about like what kind of value can I bring to them as well. So maybe they have I know Dylan is always looking for great, topics to teach about. I'm sure if he had like a really cool guest he could bring on his YouTube channel, he'd be interested in that. So maybe you could facilitate that. That would help. Or if, help on a website or something, that helps too. Moving on, jobs. So jobs depends on the workplace and how sophisticated the job is. I've been in workplaces where we've had formal mentorship programs. Oftentimes, though, either they're only available for managers on up or VPs on up, or they're not offered to everyone. So your mileage may vary if you can even get into that. There's certainly, if your organization doesn't offer a formal mentorship program, you can certainly do like I just did, what I was describing earlier, find people in the organization, maybe not your boss. You probably don't want to, try to have him be your mentor because it might feel like a little I don't know, like you're kissing up or
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, what worked for me was I know that I knew that I wanted to increase my value so that I could claim a higher salary and just continue to grow as a developer. All I did for the most part was just ask my tech lead on a sort of biweekly basis what I can do to get better and what things, he did to get better. And that led me to be introduced to Robert Martin and clean code principles and solid principles. And okay, cool, let's look at this. And then, invested time in these topics and energies, listen to these podcasts, things like that. And I think that's a very valuable tool because again, it's oftentimes about direction, and someone can point you in a direction that worked for them. Now, you still have to do your best to evaluate if it's good advice or not, but that's that's been my best way of increasing in the workplace because a lot of companies, you don't have time to shadow a lot of times. You're not, most organizations aren't going to say, hey, sit here with this person for 3 months and don't do your own work. It's going to be a lot of you just got to jump into it and go forward. And it's one of the reasons I like code reviews or pull requests so much is that sometimes you get a little bit of that mentoring in the actual PR.
That's a good point. Yeah, definitely take advantage of having a senior developer, even someone that's maybe not senior, maybe the same level, or even you might consider like a junior developer. If they can review your code and they come up with some good ideas, and take that to heart and try to fix them. The thing is, I've seen in most organizations, people are afraid to be too critical in code reviews because they don't want themselves to be criticized. And I've seen a lot of places where you just rubber stamp code reviews. There's not really too much thought behind it.
I would say that's more common than not. If you're on my team, I will be nice, but I will also be a savage with how we can make this better. Because I think it's very important, and I also think it's one of the things that separates a junior dev from a senior dev is the ability to have to put emphasis on code quality as well as being able to provide mentoring and direction professionally, right? If you're in your code review and you're like, this shit sucks, that's not obviously professional. You have to say, all right, what do you think about this? Here's a code example and here's why.
It's like bigger organizations like Google, when you do your first, probably every code commit, but most of your code commits, you're going to have to make changes. It's almost inevitable. They're going to make you either put in more tests. They're going to, they really pride themselves in code reviews and high quality code. So hopefully you're in an organization like that. If you're not, you can start the trend. You can be the guy that just doesn't rubber stamp every code request, at least put some time into it. Now we're all busy. We don't have like hours to spend to do a code review. And depending on what kind of code review, if it's 10,000 lines, it's really difficult to do a code review in 10,000 lines of stuff. We can say something, Dylan?
I mean, if I saw a 10,000 line code review, I would not even comment on it. I'd say abandon this PR and send it back in multiple PRs. And then I probably would have a conversation with the developer because that now what has happened is you've actually put people in a position where now I do need a week to do your code review and you're looking to get it rubber stamped. And this thing happens. I've been in this situation before. But then, then you get some mentoring there where like, hey, let me explain to you why we need to have, you need to do PRs every feature instead of every project sort of thing.
Yeah, it's hard though. I know that in my organization and past organizations, sometimes you get these huge feature requests that are going to take like 30 different files to fix. And it's really hard for one person to do it. I guess you could try to think of ways you could break it up to different commits and then submit those one at a time.
Well, yeah, I mean, sort of how I would tackle it is by tasks, right? So you create your feature branch, and then based off the feature branch, you have your task branch. And so each task, maybe for this 10,000 line PR, you have 10 tasks, and then you submit it task by task. And it's a much more manageable way of tackling the project. And it's a much more manageable way of having someone be able to review your stuff because they're not going to understand what 10,000 lines of code are supposed to do or how it's supposed to work, or even take the time for it to run it and see that it works.
Exactly. Okay. Yeah. I understand what you're saying. Yeah. I know a lot of times when you're using like project management systems like Jira, you might have one epic, and then you have one epic has like 5 stories, and one story has 10 tasks. And then each one of those tasks, you could create a PR for each one of those tasks instead of one task for the story.
Yeah, and I think a lot of times people think that you just create a PR when it's ready to go into dev or ready to go into production, whatever your pipeline is. But that's not necessarily true. You can create a PR for anything, and then it can go into a branch. And then once the branch is ready, that and all the tasks have been submitted, you just move it on up.
That makes a lot of sense. So keep that in mind. Meetups. So ask to touch. Let me rephrase that. So try to keep in touch with someone that you admire.
Always ask
To
for
touch first.
information.
Yep.
Yeah.
Not just in mentorship, but in life.
Yeah.
Yes. That's another good thing. Depending on who you work with, always respect people's boundaries. If you're going to mentorship, especially if it's a male asking a female for mentorship, that could be construed the wrong way if you don't ask the right way. And I'd say for nowadays, just make your intentions clear and stay away from situations that could lead to harassment or anything like that.
No means no, even in mentorship. Some people don't want, look, although I think it's a responsibility of developers to mentor people, that's my belief. There's plenty of people that don't want to do any deal with it. Like, I can do my job, that's it. Good luck. And you have to accept that.
Yeah. The worst thing you do is not everybody's wired to do that. So in meetups, we've kind of talked about this before, but you can talk to a lot of people. If you find someone that's doing something you would want to do, you might admire, that'd be a great place just in the meetup. I know almost all the coding meetups I've gone to, there's usually a time at the end where everyone just kind of chit chats and talks. A lot of these places have beer or pizza. I mean, it's really made for everybody just to come together and talk. And then usually you see a presentation. So that's a perfect time to just catch up with people catch up with people that you know, or even just talk to some random people that you don't know. And you may find they have some interests that you have, and maybe they worked on a project that you're going to be working on next. Ask for help. Once again, doesn't have to be formal. You don't have to say, hey, will you be my mentor? But maybe start gleaming ideas off of them. One thing really cool is there's some organizations like, I think women are better at this. Maybe I'm being a little sexist, but women are great at forming groups. I know Women Who Code. I had a great conversation to the last conference I was at, and they had all sorts of workshops and study groups. They created study groups outside of work. I know other meetups do this too, but that's a great place to meet mentors and to learn.
Yeah, and of course, build your network, right? We hear all these sort of build your network for everything. But meetups have been probably the only place I've actually, outside of the workplace, built a network and sort of grown my skills. And, oftentimes one of the great things about meetups, and if you don't know where to get any meetups, you just go meetup.com. That's typically where I go. And it'll vary by your area. If you're in a more rural place, it might be a little harder. But you can go and find topics ahead of time to see that you're interested in. And now you can actually meet people that are proficient in these technologies, giving presentations, and again, get that direction and feedback, which is so crucial in person that, people take questions at these things. They talk with people after. Definitely integrate this into your sort of learning process and growing process.
Like 15 years ago, before I met my wife, I didn't even realize, and I don't know if this was as big back then, probably not, but the meetup culture, especially with meetup.com, is also a lot of people meet their dates on there, meet their significant others, because it's just not for like coding groups. There's so much other stuff happening on there.
I'll share a little bit of a strange story. There was a moment in time where my girlfriend and I weren't together, and I was going to coding meetups. This is why I was learning to code. And a girl that I met at a meetup, I had seen her at like 2 other meetups. Very, very nice girl that works as a developer now as well. And we were hanging out and coding, and I was like so concerned being a single guy that oh, are we just studying, or are we actually going to go on dates or something like this? And so by like the third time that we're hanging out, she's like, oh, I just want to let you know that I'm a lesbian. I was like, that's fantastic, because I just enjoy having somebody to study with who actually will meet up, because so many people will flake on you, but like it's just great to have someone to project. But it's just it's just sort of reminded me of that, based off of like, you know, people go on these dates on meetups apparently.
uh, yeah, yeah, that would have been pretty
She
crazy.
was very concerned that she was like gonna crush me. I was like, no, thank you. Let's go back to building our weather application now.
I still not have mastered that between, hey, I'm really good friends with a woman, and well, when I was single, and then like it was there. Is this more than that? I think it as you grow up, it becomes easier, but when you're younger, it's definitely like,
I mean, this conversation is about to go in a whole different direction.
all right, let's get back on the rails here.
The hormones are raging, all this.
So last kind of place you can meet mentors, and this is a little bit more towards entrepreneurship, but we talked a little bit about study groups, but there's something called Mastermind Groups, which is sort of like a study group, was where you can sign up for a service. And I know there's a couple like mastermindjam.com. I used to be in one called Entreprogrammers, and it sets you up with a group, usually 3 to 6 people, and you meet either weekly or every other week, and then you guys go over a topic. And it's usually virtual, so you don't have to be in person, although there are some meetups or some masterminds that meet up in person. And then it gives you kind of an accountability group, and it's sort of like coaching too. So usually someone in the hot seat, and then other people question them. And the topics, usually it's entrepreneurship. And I know that's kind of dovetails really nicely with a lot of people who are getting into development and programming, because a lot of us want to become freelancers or work remotely or work for ourselves one day. I know me and Dylan both have that mindset.
Cash money, baby.
Yeah. So it's worth mentioning that that's another way you can find really cool people. I mean, definitely if you can get a mastermind with 1 or 2 people that are a few steps ahead of you, that can be really helpful. So if you're trying to learn how to become better at programming, and then you have this mentorship and this mastermind with other developers, that will help too.
And I think it's important to mention that what you're looking to be mentored in is going to change as your career progresses, right? You know, maybe when you're very early on, you're just looking to make a network and you're looking to just find direction on what to learn. But as you say, you know, you get some years of experience and you're saying, okay, how can I become a better developer? Maybe you need to work on communication, and you know, you need to ask people how they did that, or maybe you need to figure out how to go to that next level. Okay, how can I go from a junior to senior? How can I go from a senior to a tech lead to a you know, architect? And there are going to be some mentors that were good at the time and that, you know, maybe taught you what you needed to get to where you are, but they never found that mentor to take them to the next level. So some of these things that we're suggesting, keep in mind that although it may have worked to you the first time, there may be other avenues you need to use and sort of utilize to move on to the next level of success.
If you had to plot out from being a pizza delivery guy to now being a professional software developer making 6-figure salary, could you plot out like a point of time where you had different mentors help you along the way and how it's changed from then until now?
Yes. I mean, so the most important thing for me, and like I have a section in my book that's like 4 pages long that I'm writing, it's about negative mentors, people that I don't want to be like. And like, because to me, visually, running towards something is great, but running away from something is just like you're running for your life. And there's a whole group of that. And then the virtual aspects, the people who I'm doing the tutorials online, I'm following, you know, these people who are telling me about what it's like to be a developer and what to watch out for. And then these people online that I respect, reading their books and going from there. I mean but that's what worked for me. Mentorship's a very personal thing where like I can explain what worked for me, but it may not be the same for everybody. I think a lot of times people in general just want the, you know, how many times have we been asked, how can I be a developer in 6 months? Tell me the path. And it's somewhat, you can't really always.
Yeah. I mean, like I would say like Free Code Camp was probably a big mentor.
Yeah. For me, Free Code Camp, following Quincy Larson, you know, reading books like Clean Code, the Clean Coder, the Complete Software Developer's Career Guide. John gets a lot of crap for that book from like people who are that book introduces you to a little bit of everything, which is, fantastic for when you don't have a little bit of anything. And there's a lot of I've interviewed people who have read that book and took the advice and got a job in 3 months, low paying internship type stuff. But taking multiple resources, and that's one of the things I tell people when learning is, don't just use one source to learn technologies. Use multiple, because you're going to find out what's important, because you have multiple people telling you it's important, and then you're also going to be introduced to different things.
Yeah, I know for me that John Sonmez's book was really important. That whole crew, John Sonmez, I talked about a little bit, Entre Programmers. He had his own podcast. He still does, where he talks about his experiences of going from a software developer to an entrepreneur. That really helped me out. I used to listen to a lot of Pat Flynn. I do sometimes still. He's an entrepreneur. That really helped me. Looking up to some of these guys on Egghead and Pluralsight and Udemy, that really inspired me to do more. My MBA program, really influenced where I was going, and I had some mentors there too.
Yeah,
so I definitely can track it as well.
Yeah, and like those are a lot of resources that helped me get my start. But even like progressing and going and becoming a senior dev, like my previous tech lead, you were actually a guest on his podcast, the Six Figure Dev. I count for him one of the reasons I'm, have been able to increase my skill level and move forward. And that wasn't a mentor that I had available to me till I was in the workplace. And when I say, hey, I'm ready to become a tech lead, I'm going to go find a mentor that can help me with that, and or go and become a good manager. Whatever direction my career goes, I'm going to invest the time and resources and provide the value to the people I need to, so that I can get the value and accomplish my goals that I want to.
Cool. I think that wraps it up for today about mentorship. I'd love to hear you guys what you guys think about mentorship. So, feel free to tweet us. I'm at EricCH. What do you have?
I don't use that Twitter stuff, man. I got one. I don't use it. You people can find me. I got faith. We got a tech savvy group of people. They'll find my email. They'll find the YouTube channel. They'll find the website. They'll figure it out.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Ciao.
Hey guys, thanks for watching. If you want to find more about what I'm up to, go to dylanisrael.com.
And if you want to know what I'm up to, you can check out my website at eric.video. If you haven't already, please leave us a 5-star review on iTunes. It really helps us out. And if you do, you might even be featured on our next episode. Don't forget to check out the website at selftaughtornot.com. From there, you can sign up for a mailing list where we give away free courses and a bunch of cool stuff. And we'll also let you know when the next episode comes out. And finally, if you didn't know, we have a Facebook group. It's called Code, Tech, and Caffeine. We have over 10,000 members, and you can find the link at selftaughtornot.com. So come join us. We have tons of developers willing to help you guys, mentor you guys. Check it out. Just make sure you go to selftaughtornot.com and check out the Code, Tech, and Caffeine link. Thanks, and take care.